The following interview is being conducted as part of the Price of Freedom project by the Madison County Military Heritage Commission to inform our community of the sacrifices made by those in the military on battlefields around the world. Each veteran interviewed received an Award of Valor for their service to our country. We wish to thank the Huntsville School System and the ETV Broadcast Center for their help in presenting this Military Heritage Program. Hello everyone, I'm Tom Kennemer. Welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking with former U.S. Air Force aviator Carl Gamble. Carl served 8 years in the Air Force and is the recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross for his heroic action as a pilot in the Republic of Vietnam. Carl was inducted into the Madison County Military Hall of Heroes in 2018. Carl, it's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it very much. First of all, tell us a little about yourself. You actually grew up here in Madison County, right?
I did. Madison County, Alabama.
Yeah.
So,
And now what part? In the city of Madison, in that area?
a little city, yeah.
Yeah. Now, where did you go to school? Tell us about going to school.
Well, I started out at Madison Elementary, which burned down while I was in the first grade.
And that's when our schools were segregated in that in time period?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But we went to school in churches until 5th grade. We had 4 churches, from the 1st to the 9th, 2 classes in each church, and then the last class, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So when you were promoted from the 1st to the 2nd grade, simply walked across
the hall.
You were in the 2nd grade.
Amazing.
For the 3rd and the 4th, you went to another church.
Yeah.
And then the 5th and 6th. And then West Madison Elementary School was built while I was in the 5th grade.
I see. Did you play any sports or anything in school?
I played at it.
Kind of like me. You gave it a try.
I gave it a try, yeah. But we didn't have a lot. You know, baseball was really the sport that we had. That we played most.
Now I understand you were born in Chattanooga, or that area.
Yes.
But your family moved down here your dad was working in this area? Or?
Well, my mom moved from Chattanooga to Madison because my granddad had built a house, a new home. So she moved in to kind of take care of him and brought me with her. My other siblings were much older. There's like 16 years between me and my oldest sister. So when I used to cut up, my mom said, "You better straighten up. You're lucky to be here anyways."
Gave it to you straight.
Yes, she did.
Now, Carl, you had thoughts of going in the military when you were very young, when you'd see planes, military planes flying over. Tell us about that experience.
Well, growing up as a kid, you know, we had to pick cotton. And sometimes in the cotton fields, I would see the F-84s from Augusta National Guard, which I think was a part of their training area. And with no speed sound below 10,000 feet at that time, they could be right at the speed of sound. And you would hear the sonic boom. Sometimes you'd see them, sometimes you wouldn't. And if we were at home and not in the cotton field, my mom, when she heard that noise, would run inside to see if any of our glasses had been cracked, because that right at the speed of sound. And that's what I told her I'd like to do, is become a pilot. And she
probably said, "Well, don't fly over my house."
Well, she actually said that if you believe you can do it and you commit yourself, then you can do it. Yeah. So that was my dream, and I followed my dream.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice.
Thank you.
So you graduated from school and high school in the churches, and then you went to Tennessee State. Tell us.
Well, I went to Council Training High School.
Council, yes, sir.
And then, which is now, I think, the ROTC building for Alabama A&M. But yeah, I went to Tennessee State University and I majored in aviation technology. And then from Tennessee State, I went to pilot training, Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas. But I do a lot of speaking to kids, youth these days, and I tell them there's 3 things that they really need to do, because this is what helped me. You have to commit, endure, and then use your mind as a visible tool which is mental discipline. And I say I committed myself. And the endurance is because my first obstacle was taking the physical and finding out that I had astigmatism and I didn't have 20/20, which would disqualify me from being a pilot. But I kept the faith. And when I graduated from Tennessee State, well, actually before I graduated, I took another physical in summer camp. And they said, well, you don't have astigmatism. You are qualified to go to pilot training.
It went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went away.
Yeah, and so your
Whatever,
dream continued. Yeah, yeah.
It's a blessing that it happened. 'Cause,
Yeah. And where did you go? Where did you go to the pilot training?
I went to pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas.
Okay.
But I had a couple other things. I was always skinny.
Yeah.
And I didn't meet the weight requirement. I was 2 pounds under. And the technicians at Tennessee State said, that's, just have somebody else weigh for you. And then you bring the paperwork filled out back, and we'll take care of it from there. But when I went to pilot training, I was still 2 pounds under. And I can't have nobody else to do it for me. I got to do it right there in front of the technician. And he said, you got to pass this physicals. So what I suggest you do is go to the commissary, buy a bunch of bananas, and eat all you can eat. And that's what I did.
Fatten yourself up,
Fatten
at least
yourself
temporarily.
up, yeah. And when I came back, I made the weight, but the bananas started to come back up, and I just threw up all over him in the place, and that's the things he got. I didn't really mean to, but they just wouldn't stay down. Yeah, but I made the weight.
That was the main thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So how long was that training, Carl, at Laughlin?
It's 56 weeks.
Yeah.
Undergraduate pilot training is one of the most difficult things that I think I've ever done.
You start out in propellers and then
Start
work
out,
into
yeah,
jets
it's
and
three-phase.
whatever,
Start out in what we call T-41s, which is a single-engine propeller. Then you go to T-37, which is like we call it the Tweeterberg. And then, of course, your last phase is the T-38, which is the supersonic supersonic trainer. And washout ratio or fail ratio in pilot training is like 36%. 1 out of every 3 pilots will fail. And some of it's due to flying skills, some for physicals. But we started out with, I think, 96 pilots, and we graduated 63. So when you finish pilot training, you're one of the elite professions in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So.
And 56 weeks, I think you said. It's
56
a long
weeks,
time.
yes.
Do you ever have any near misses, like while you're in training, or that sort of thing?
A lot to scare you, scaring me.
Yeah.
But no near misses. But the T-38 it's a very airplane will kill you if you don't do the right thing. We've had astronauts to be killed or to lose their lives in T-38s. And we've lost some students too. I lost one of the students while I was in pilot training.
Carl, what year was this now you were going through pilot training?
I went to pilot training from 67 to 68.
Okay, all right. Now, did you go, after you finished your training, did you go immediately to Vietnam, or did you go to another base for
you go
training?
When you get your assignment, each aircraft that you go to, you have to go to school for it. So I went to England Air Force Base in Louisiana. I thought I had gotten the gunship, which is the C-47 with the Gatling guns. If you saw Puff the Magic Dragon, that was the airplane. Well, I didn't get it. I got the War portion of the airplane, which is you drop leaflets. And the War part is to tell the enemy to turn in his rifle for food. So instead of dropping bombs, we were dropping leaflets. Our nickname was the Bullshit Bombers.
Well, you have nicknames.
That's what it was.
Now, was it just a draw, or luck of the draw, or how did?
Well, they started to take the C-47s and do other things with them. I think even train some of the VNAVs on them. So, you know, but it turned out to be a pretty good mission because you were dropping leaflets. They wouldn't, well, I thought they wouldn't shoot at you. That's what I told my friend. And he said, yeah, they will. They shoot at everybody. So they haven't shot at you yet, but you will. They will do it. Yeah.
Now, you were stationed, I think, at Da Nang Air Base.
Yeah, for 1 year.
Yeah, I see.
244 combat missions.
Wow.
In that 1 year.
Carl, when you got some free time, however little that was, you know, during wartime, and when you're in a war zone, what did you do? What kind of relaxation was available for you there at Da Nang Air Base?
Well, not much at Da Nang. You know, just the officers club. Then you got to go away on vacation twice. You know, I went to Australia and to Bangkok, but a lot of just playing cards, stuff like that. Basketball, I didn't play a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
Sometimes you would go over to the beach, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Pretty busy most of the time flying.
I'm sure you formed lasting friendships in the service. Do you still stay in contact with any of those that you flew with and wartime or in service?
Yeah, one of the guys at the induction tonight, Brian Settles, he also wrote a book, was at Da Nang with me. And then my friend, Fig Newton, who is now a 4-star general, and my classmate at Tennessee State University. And I still keep in contact with them. And a lot more of my friends that are in different places.
Yeah.
So.
There's no email, of course, back then. How often were you able to receive regular mail, or did you? And also, did you get to call back home? And you have a phone set up where you could call back home maybe once a month or?
No, basically letters, and then videos or tapes. You know, that they would send back and forth. I wasn't married at that time, so I didn't.
And you get the cakes and the cookies. You remember they would be mashed, you know, and they would be kind of lopsided. You know, we'd receive some of those. Did you get any of those?
No,
you know?
not me.
All the guys are gathering around. Well, we'll eat it, you know.
No. Like I say, I wasn't married, so I just. Well, now I got things from my mom.
Yeah.
And my sister, but I never got the cookies.
Now, you were in different parts of Vietnam. Being a pilot, you got to see a lot of the country. Describe it for us. Describe the country of Vietnam for us.
Well, I understand it was a beautiful country before the war, because it had become a war zone. So just, you know, a lot of bomb crates. Agent Orange had kind of destroyed most of the heavy foliage on the trees. And, it was a torn country. It was a war country.
Yeah. This was 69, you were there 68?
This was 68, 69.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Carl, we mentioned earlier you received the Distinguished Flying Cross for your heroic action during a mission in Vietnam. Describe that mission for us. Oh, what happened?
Well, like I said before, the enemy in a VC wouldn't shoot at you because you were harmless and you were just dropping leaflets, so they'd let you go. But on this particular day, I guess they were just pissed. It didn't matter who came in the area, they were shooting. And we got hit with a .50 caliber that came up through the fuselage, hit some hydraulic lines, and went through the left engine, through the left wing, into the left engine. Right away, that engine started to burn. Even though we shut it down, it was still burning. And I had to make a decision whether I was going to bail the crew out over hostile territory or try to fly the airplane back to Da Nang, because in that particular area, the VC, they weren't taking any prisoners at that time. They would take your Geneva Convention card and nail it to your forehead. So we definitely weren't going to jump out of the airplane. And as soon as I make that decision, make a turn back to Da Nang, the left wing fuel tank explodes, takes part of the wing with it. So we're trying to fly an airplane on one engine.
How far was it back?
It was like 30 miles.
30 miles, yeah.
But that airplane only flew like 120 miles an hour.
And explain what altitude were you when you
were
hit?
Like 3,000 feet.
Okay, yeah.
3,000.
So you make the turn and
the turn, and like I said, on the way back, right after I made that decision, the left wing fuel tank explodes. So we're missing some of the wing and flying on one engine, and the other engine is on fire. And that engine is only 9 feet from where I'm sitting. That airplane's not air conditioned, so the window's open. And now I'm getting smoke and fumes. They come through the window. They're going back into the cabinet where they're dropping leaflets. So I get a call from the load master, says, "Sir, could you please hurry and get us down? We're suffocating from smoke back here." All the time I'm thinking, wow, I certainly don't want to die in a place that I don't want to be anyway. And I thought if I did, I'd probably never see my mom again. Mom who I love so dearly, my mom who watched her husband shoot and kill her brother right in front of her own eyes. But then I started to think, well, with the courage of my mom and God as my savior, I think I can make this thing work and get it back. So as we're flying it back, the tower calls and said, as we approach the airport, I can see the runway. The tower calls up and said, "You're too low. You're not going to make it." We have no other choice. You know, we can't go around. But we do land the airplane, and once we land it, we shut the engine down, and we're trying to get out of it. By that time, the smoke and the flames are so intense, they're going past the exit door. And the crew calls from the back and say, "We can't get out. You know, there's nothing but fire back here," going past the door. So Pedro, the helicopter, hovers above us to push the flames away from the door long enough. Yeah, so we can get out. And since I'm the captain, I was the last one to get out of the airplane. By that time, the smoke is so dense, I didn't see the exit door. I crawled right past it. And then when my head hit the bulkhead, I'm saying, "Oh man, you missed it. But you got to get out of this airplane." So swing around on your butt, put your left hand on the fuselage, feel until you feel it open it, and then jump out. And I did, and we weren't out of that airplane, no more than 2 minutes, maybe not that long, when the auxiliary fuel tanks exploded. It looked like it had been hit with napalm. The whole thing was destroyed. And I look at that as a miracle. And I am lucky to be here. If we had flown for another 2 minutes, I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't have made it out.
No way.
Carl, many of the veterans we talk with mention a family member, a tough sergeant during boot camp, that sort of, someone who helped prepare them for the actions they took while in combat. Was there someone like that for you?
I don't know. I still go back to my mom, where I get my strength from.
Your upbringing.
Yeah. And then I did have a Tuskegee Airman, Mr. Alvin Johnson, who was a class of 44, 45. Who he was in training, pilot training, 1 year after I was born. But he was a protege. You know, he helped me. But by that time, I had gone through most of my Air Force training. And he was like a mentor and saying, "This is what you need to do, and this is what you should do." And I said, "Yeah, I'll listen to you sometimes, but not all the time."
You pick and choose.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Carl, how would you describe to those watching this interview, and maybe watching it, especially our young people, what it's like to serve in a war zone, the thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during battle? Describe that for us.
Well, you know, you can talk to people anybody that's been in war. And you go to war and you don't come back as the same person. They're just too many things that you see, that you live through. The PTSD, which I was diagnosed with in 2004. Didn't know what it was. I thought they were just bad dreams. But war changes you, and I think now, even with some of our veterans today, they're like 22 suicides a day. Because they can't get over it. And it's called different things. It was called shell shock, you know, battle fatigue, and now PTSD. So you just don't know what it's going to do to you.
You had some people that worked with you on that, Carl? That
I have a psychiatrist that I see now regularly.
Sure.
And I'm on medication for it.
I see.
So.
I know people often wonder, is it okay to be afraid or scared during combat? How do you answer that? How do you answer it?
Well, if you're not scared, you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Because fear is a part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, people go to war, they get killed.
Yeah.
They fight. And fear sometimes is what drives you, what keeps you alive.
That training kicks in too.
It's like another shot,
yeah.
you know. It keeps you going.
So. What about, how does it make you feel when people call you a hero, when they hear about or read about things that you did while you were in the military? How does that make you feel?
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah.
You know, and but I just look at myself as doing a job, did the best that I could do, and was able to save lives in terms of that airplane. And I'm just thankful to still be here.
Yeah.
So.
Do you often wonder, would you do it all over again?
I probably would.
Yeah.
I probably would because once you start flying, it gets in your blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, you know, what drove me.
Yeah. Carl, aviation's always been a big part of war movies, and I'm sure you've seen some, and you've been in war, and you've flown an aircraft during a war. Do the movies often depict it? Is it correct, you know, or how do you feel when you watch something like that?
I think a lot of times what's in the movie has been changed because it's their sell, you know. Yeah. But I can't look, when I look at a movie with somebody else, especially about airplanes, they don't want me to be there because I'm critiquing.
Yeah.
And I think most of the movies are made with 90% of the people not knowing the technical aspects of it. So they make the movie and don't correct those things. Yeah. My wife said, "No, I'm not watching this with you. You need to go out of the room. I'll watch it later." Yeah. So, but I guess they're good in there. Some are bad.
Yeah. They always play up the heightened expense.
Yeah, they got to make the money. Yeah. Got to make it good.
That's right.
So.
And make it interesting. Yeah. There were protests in the 60s and 70s against the Vietnam War. Did you encounter any of the protests when you came home? And if so, what was that experience like?
I graduated in '65, and the protests were just really where they started before that. But when I went to pilot training and then went to Vietnam, most of it was really, you know, not peaking, but a lot more of it. Yeah. I wasn't involved in it that much. I was in a protest at Tennessee State once, and we got arrested. And when we went to jail, I guess, when a policeman asked a friend of mine what his name was, and he said Sammy Davis Jr., and he still got he had the print on his face where he got smacked, but that was probably the only one I was in. And I came back. I went to SAC at Keosauqua Air Force Base. Not a lot there.
That's when you started flying the KC-135?
Yeah, that's when I started flying tankers.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, we know that's the civilian version is the 707. Talk about that. That was one of the first jets, you know, the transcontinental.
Well, yeah,
it's a big plane, 4-engine plane.
Yeah, big airplane. Carried a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
And that's what the mission was, to refuel bombers or B-52s, other airplanes. Yeah. Also, we did a lot of refueling in the Gulf of Tonkin because we'd go back, it was TDY at Utapao, Thailand. And we fly out of Utapao back to refuel fighters, bombers.
During the Vietnam War?
During the war, yeah.
During the war, yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah, so I had 2 different phases of the war for me like that.
What was it like flying the KC-135?
I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy a lot of the things that came with it. I didn't enjoy being on alert, you know, where you're on alert for 7 days. The whole crew has to go together, something like that. But flying an airplane, it was very enjoyable. and we actually participated in a rescue mission in a KC-135.
Yeah.
Well, we were the only airplane in the area, and got a call from the command post that there were some fishermen who were ice fishing, and the ice had broken between them and the shore, and they were floating down Lake Superior, and needed someone to, you know, spot them right away. So they called us in, and we went down to, I can't really say the altitude, but very, very low. And we did spot them, and then we called the Coast Guard in, and they were able to come in and rescue them. But that ice, they started on a big hunk of ice. By the time we got to them, it was really dissipating.
Now you're flying at KC-135, was it 500-600 miles an hour?
Well, your true airspeed is like 440, something like,
okay.
Well, somewhere in there, it depends.
Yeah.
And then you're refueling, you're refueling another airplane.
Right.
Air-to-air refueling,
Yeah.
depending on the airplane, somewhere at that speed.
Yeah.
So.
And so you have to be really, really. I mean, well, I think things have happened, but describe how that goes. You know, how you refuel
you refuel another airplane. Let's take B-52.
Yeah.
And again, you're hooked up.
Yeah.
And you're giving him fuel. He's getting heavier, and you're getting lighter. So he's kind of pushing you. Mm. And the first thing you want to do, if you have a disconnect, is break away. You go straight or climb, and he goes down, because if the airplane goes under you, you create a suction that can be a mid-air collision. So I had to be very careful with that. And then you have guys who's, you know, they started getting vertigo, or they started getting, you know, after 30 minutes on the boom, it's
yeah. So it usually takes about 30 minutes to refuel.
It depends on how much fuel you got to give. Yeah.
I see. And then the fighter jets, of course, it wouldn't take quite as long.
No, but a lot of times they come back and they are really low on fuel, and they're trying to see who's going to get on the boom first. So there has to be some coordination and some discipline there.
I mean, what is how many is the crew number of the crew members on the KC-135?
KC, because you have a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and a boom operator, so that's four.
Four people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would come disconnected. I mean,
like I say, you have a lot of things that happen.
Yeah. To deal with it.
Yeah, at that speed, anything can happen, because sometimes you're in turbulence.
Yeah.
And then the night refueling is probably worse.
Yeah.
Once a day. Yeah.
And and you did that for a couple of years?
I did that for 4 years.
And then that's when you left the Air Force, is that right?
No, I left the Air Force after that. As a matter of fact, I was at KI. I met my wife there. She was at Northern Michigan University. And we met. She told me the first time we met, just go away, don't go away mad. You can just go away. I said, wow, that was kind of cold.
Plain talk, isn't it?
Wow, and then 9 months later we were married, so it worked out.
Now, tell me about, you decided to leave the Air Force because you had had an offer or was interested in going to become a commercial air pilot. Tell us about, and then working at McDonald's. Describe that time period for us.
I had sent my resume and my information out to most of the carriers, and I got hired by one. But 2 weeks, you know, I had said to myself that it's time for me to get out of the Air Force because, you know, I don't want to be shot at anymore. And when we were in Da Nang, we were getting rocket attacks. I think I'd get out and go to the airlines where, you know, they fly with the pretty girls and
go to all different places
around the world, that kind of thing. Yeah. But 2 weeks before I got out, I got a letter that said, due to the fuel shortage, your class has been canceled. Not only are we hiring, but we're laying people off.
Wow.
And I had made no other arrangements. I mean, you know, right then, I think basically aviation was my life. But I had no job, and I couldn't get into reserves. Everything was full. So I had a friend who called me and said he would put me in the middle of management in McDonald's in Detroit, Michigan. But in middle management, you got to start out in the store. So we were, I was cooking hamburgers, that kind of thing. I said, wow, I'm decorated combat veterans, I'm cooking hamburgers. And in Detroit, sometimes it got pretty rough. They'd rob the store, put the crews in the freezers. We had an alarm, so if we got robbed, we could call the police, at least. And while I was there, I got a call from a friend of mine who said he'd gotten hired with Piedmont Airlines. As a matter of fact, that year, Piedmont was the only carrier that hired, I believe, maybe Brandon. But I said, Piedmont, who was Piedmont Airlines? Yeah. A crop dusting outfit or something. And he said, boy, you want to cook hamburgers or you want to fly airplanes? You better get your bony butt down here.
and very quick.
It was a no-brainer. So I got hired with Piedmont in 1974. Yeah. First year, you don't make no money because you're on probation. Right. $600 a month. We were in D.C. My wife got an apartment or a condo for $500 and something a month. You know, that was tight.
Yeah, that was tight.
And then one year, then you get furloughed because it depends on the expansion of the airline, retirement, and all that thing. So I got a furlough for another 6 months. But then I came back the second time, and Piedmont started to really, really expand. And I made captain in 5 years instead of like, normally it's like 12 or 15 years.
What kind of airplane were you flying for Piedmont, and where did you go? What were you doing? Well, you started out of North Carolina, or?
I started out in what we call YS-11, which is a 2-engine turboprop. It carries about 50 people, 58 people, somewhere in there. And then I got upgraded to the turboprop. We just flew from Washington to Atlanta, 6 stops down, 5 back. It was like a 12-hour duty day. And then I went to the 737, 737-200, 737-300, and then in Boeing 757, Boeing 767, and I retired off the A330, which carried 300 passengers. Airplane's 208 feet long. Wow. 9 bathrooms, 14 flight attendants.
You flew all over mostly to Europe, right?
Charlotte, London, Frankfurt, Paris, Madrid, that area, yeah.
And tell us about the hours like an airline pilot. You can only fly so many hours a day or a week. Describe that for us.
Well, we what you call a max that you can fly, and I think our maximum was 85 hours a month. But that works out to be so many days. And normally, when I first got hired, it was like 12 days. Now it's like 14, 15, 16 days. But the last 2 years that I flew to Europe, it was like 15 days. So you flew 2 weeks and you're off 2 weeks. And the pay had just gone out of really, from $600 a month to $328 an hour. Wow. So
change
that changed a lot. Made my life a lot easier.
I can imagine. Yeah. Now, and Piedmont was bought out by American, is that correct?
Bought out by U.S. Air.
Yeah, okay.
And then U.S. Air, American bought U.S. Air. So Piedmont, U.S. Air, and then American.
What was your favorite big commercial aircraft to fly?
A330.
A330 was that nice. Huh?
Yeah, it's just a dream come true.
Yeah. But you flew mostly from Charlotte over to, say, Paris?
Yeah, London, Frankfurt,
and that was like 6, 7 hours in that?
No, it's like 9 hours over and 11 hours back, something like that. I see, yeah. Been 15 years since I've been on
stops in between, of course.
No, you don't want to do that.
That's right. Now, when did you retire, Carl?
I retired in January 2003.
Okay.
When I retired, the retirement age was 60. And then they extended to 65. So the guys now are retiring at 65. Then there's a big shortage of pilots, I think, within the next 20 years or so because of the airline's not hiring enough people from 60 to 65 age, and then just to the global expansion of airlines around the world. So that's what I do now when I speak to youth. I let them know that this is a good time to really get involved.
We certainly want to mention now, before you, in 1984, you retired, you said in 2003, but in 1984, that was a special flight. I want you to describe for us what was going on and what happened that day in 1984.
Well, airlines don't get rocket attacks, and they don't get shot at sometimes, I guess, I don't know, but they do get hijacked.
Yeah.
And this is a routine mission on 737-200 from Charlotte to Miami. And en route to Miami, we're getting ready to light down 20,000 feet or so. The flight attendant calls me on the interphone and says that we're being hijacked. Hijacked? Wait a minute. This guy just gave me a note, went past me and said that there are 2 accomplices with him. They brought a bomb on board, and they're prepared, or they will blow this airplane up unless we take them to Cuba. Well, hijack sound pretty bad, but when she said bomb, my butt stuck right up to my brain.
Yeah,
I could think of my name for the first 30 seconds. But then you start to do the things you're supposed to do.
Right.
Make a long story short, we ended up taking him because being the benevolent young man that I am, I said, let me talk to him, see if he's really real. So I spoke with him. He had gone into the bathroom. She gave him the end of his phone so he could talk to me. I asked him if it was a hoax or a joke that we could go and land in Miami and everything would be taken care of there. He said, Captain, I assure you this is not a hoax. This is not a joke. And if you land in Miami, we will blow this airplane up and all these passengers' lives will be on your hand. So we communicate with ATC. Need to know from our dispatch how much fuel to get there. We need a flight plan. And they concur that for the safety of the passengers, go ahead and take them. And that's what we did.
You had enough fuel. And
we had enough fuel. And that's what they didn't want us to do, to hold and bicker back and forth and then get low on fuel. Yeah. So that's what we did.
How was it landing in Havana? I mean, you never landed there before.
Oh, it's a 13,000-foot runway. So you land, and then you go all the way to the end of the runway, because if there is a bomb and they explode it, you're far enough from the terminal that you won't hurt people there. But what they do is they surround the airplane with the Cubans.
Militia.
They have more like the Army. They have carbines and handguns, and they wait for. They let the passengers out first, and they let the crew off, and they wait for him to come to the door and give himself up, which he did. And then they take the dogs, they search all the luggage, and they didn't find a bomb. So,
how did they handle him when they?
Well, when they took him off the airplane, he thought, I don't know, he was going to get some training and come back and use it. But they took him off the airplane, and he spent 15 years in prison in Cuba. And then he spent 15 years as a citizen, I believe. But he was coming back here. He had to come back here in 2014. He wanted to see his family or something like that. And he had to go through an air piracy trial again. And the FBI called me and said, we need you to come down and testify. And I said, hell no, I don't want to see this guy again. Excuse me.
Yeah.
He pleaded to a lesser charge, and I didn't have to go. So that's when we decided to write the book.
Carl, you've written a book. It's entitled My Blue Yonder. And this is about, of course, your experiences landing a burning plane and then being hijacked, and quite a few other experiences in here as well. Talk about your book.
It's a memoir of my life, really. From the cotton fields of Alabama to landing one of the largest airplanes in the world. My career expands over a period of 37 years. 8 years in the Air Force and 29 years with U.S. Air. And half my life in the cockpit of airplanes. And during those 37 years, like I landed a burning airplane in Vietnam, and then I was hijacked to Cuba, and received the Distinguished Flying Cross. And I have seven air medals with 6 oak leaf clusters, something like that. I'm not really familiar with that term. I am. I just can't remember it. It's been over 15 years ago.
Well, I'm sure the audience is good reading. You know, it's interesting reading because not too many pilots. What is it? Talk about bold and old. I think is part of the.
Yes, there's a saying in the airline industry that there are old pilots and there are bold pilots. Yeah. But there are no old, bold pilots, because if you're too bold, you won't live to be old. Yeah. And my saying is there are pilots who landed burning airplanes, and there are pilots who've been hijacked. Yeah. I am potentially the first pilot to do both. Yeah. So that's my story.
Well, congratulations on your book, and
Thank you.
I'm sure the audience, it's very interesting.
Well, it's on Amazon. You can get it from me.
That's right. Good. Carl, tell us about your family. I know you and your wife Elaine have 2 children and several grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been married? You and Elaine been married?
It'll be 46 years at the end of December 30th, and we have 2 kids. But they're not kids.
And she's still putting up with you.
Yeah, I'll put up with her too. It's a 2-way street.
Right. That's what I tell my wife all the time.
I can't tell the age, but I have a son and a daughter. Yeah. And they both have 2 grandkids, a girl and a boy each. And they came with us so they can go to the museum here.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic.
And come to the event tonight.
Big event.
Yes.
Now, at present, you live in North Carolina. That's where you flew out of most of the time when you were flying for American Airlines.
I was in Atlanta, and then when Piedmont moved their hub to Charlotte, because Charlotte had become the predominant base, you could fly to Charlotte anywhere nonstop.
Right.
So instead of commuting from Atlanta to Charlotte, we decided to go ahead and move there because that cuts down on like a day, maybe 2 days a month where you.
Now you, of course, have the grandkids and active with them, and you speak to a lot of schools and that sort of thing. Yeah. But do you still fly any, Carl?
No.
No, you don't. No more flying.
No. First
of all,
not even
a Piper Cub or anything.
No, they said, "Why do you want to fly with a name like Gamble anyway?" You know. So,
that makes
37 years.
The experiences you've had, you know,
man. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Carl, what does the attention being inducted into the Madison County Hall of Heroes for your service to our country, what does that mean to you at this time?
Wow, that's an honor. I mean, wow, I can't find the words for it. It's like coming back home after being gone for so many years, and then seeing all the people. A lot of them that I grew up with, and then a lot of my friends are here from out of town, some of the Vietnam guys. But big thanks to you guys for inducting me. It's something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. And with the video, I can pass it on to the grandkids.
Carl, let me say that it's been a pleasure talking with you today, and I want to thank you for participating in our oral history interview series and allowing us to preserve your military experience. And thank you, sir, for your service to our country.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, appreciate it. Thank you for being with us, Carl. Thank you. If you'd like more information regarding this interview or any interview in our Military Heritage Series, please visit the Madison County Military Heritage Commission website at mcmhc.org. I'm Tom Kennemer. Thank you very much for being with us.